All right, we are live. So for anybody joining in here, Brandon's going to be hopping on momentarily. We're doing our live wholesale sourcing every Wednesday. We dive into Smart Scout and we go over how to find profitable wholesale suppliers, how to find brands, how to do outreach. So in today's live session, we're going to cover Smart Scout, sourcing through Smart Scout. We're going to actually find a product on Smart Scout completely from scratch. We didn't look at anything before this. We're going to do it cold to give you guys the exact way of how we source. We're going to identify a product that's potentially of interest. And one thing we're going to focus on in this live today is Keepa. So product analysis is key. We've talked with, a lot of you guys and a lot of you have said that product research is a big component of your business. There's a lot of there's some confusion around, Keepa. So in today's live, we really want to dive into some of that. We also want to get into outreach. So talking about, reaching out to brands, what we are saying on the phone, how we're positioning the conversation in such a way so that we are actually able to overcome rejection from these brands that we're reaching out to. So if you guys have any, questions or comments at all, as always, drop a question in the chat. If you are watching on YouTube, hit the like button. It really helps out the videos and the algorithm. So we're going to be diving in here. I'm going to jump into a screen share. All right, so the first thing we're doing here is inside of Smart Scout. When you log into Smart Scout, the first thing you're going to see is the brands tab on the left-hand side. So what you want to look for in this is you're going to go to brands. And guys, there are tons and tons of components to Smart Scout. This is not the entirety of the program, but we utilize the brands tab because we're targeting brands. So what we want to actually do is go up here to filters. And what we're going to do with filters is we're going to set just a very basic filter. It encompasses only a few different things. So we're looking for the average number of sellers to be at least 2 sellers on the listing. We're looking for a monthly revenue range of anywhere between 20 and 250,000. Now, we always say if you're a new seller, start on the lower side of that revenue range, start on the 20K range. And work your way up. So for those newer sellers, maybe we want to start up to 100K a month. And from here, we're also going to take a minimum sell price of $9. So we try not to get that sell price below $9. We do it at 9 because there's actually a sweet spot between 10 and 9. And then we're just going to search, right? And from here, we're going to scroll. We're going to look through Smart Scout and see if we can identify a brand. And I always say, as I'm scrolling through here, I'm looking for brands that might be a little bit obscure in nature. Maybe the brand name is not, it looks a little bit obscure. It looks like it might be a niche product. I'm also looking at the average number of sellers because I want to see, multiple different sellers. But at the same time, I don't want to see, 50 sellers on the listing. Now, we've talked about this many times before in terms of outreach. We target these brands in 2 different ways. Number one is simply to get a wholesale account and sell the products on a transactional level. And number 2 is to actually convince and go down the road of exclusivity and providing the brand with value. So when we do this sourcing, right, it changes over time. So we go back and forth between providing the brand value and reaching out on a transactional level, right? And we always say we want to take the path of least resistance. So that path of least resistance oftentimes is simply we are interested in opening a wholesale account. And then from there, if you're met with resistance, what you'll want to do is offer the brand value, right? Unpack those pain points. And we do that by asking why. So anytime when you reach out to a brand, you're faced with rejection, first thing we do is we ask some sort of calibrated question. We understand why the brand has those challenges. We unpack information, and then from there we match that information with value propositions. So before we get down into that, the first thing I want to do is I want to identify a brand, and I want to target and realize why that brand is actually of interest. Like, what is about the listing here that we're looking at to make that brand of interest? And so Brandon's hopping in here.
There we go.
You with us?
Yep.
All right. Yep. So you're picking right up here. I'm in Smart Scout, and we're just scrolling here. We're looking for a brand. We want to identify a brand that's potentially of interest. So as I'm scrolling through here, let me know if you see anything. And I was telling everyone that we're looking at the average number of sellers. We want to see some traction on those sellers. At the same time, we got to identify, is it something that we're interested in purchasing on a transaction level? Is it something that we're interested in providing value to the brand? If there's 30 plus sellers on the listing, chances are we're not interested in just simply selling the product. We're more so interested in converting that into, maybe a more selective or exclusive agreement. So we'll target monthly revenue range, and I set a top end of 100K on monthly revenue. And then we may look at brand score. So I'm just going to keep scrolling through here.
Yeah, I mean, you could go into that a little bit more too on like what's the difference between a transactional purchase? Like, what does that mean? Just for those that don't know.
Yeah. So before you hopped on, I explained a little bit of that, but basically it's the difference between opening a wholesale account just to sell as a reseller and providing value to a brand. So positioning the conversation in such a way where you're actually going to provide that brand with value. And we know we can do that based on different factors on the listing. So the easiest way for me to explain that is to just show an example.
Sure.
So I'm just going to pop open a couple brands here. And again, if anybody has any questions, drop them in the chat.
Fingerlings, remember those?
Yeah.
That was a crazy Q4 item. There's like weird little monkey things that you put on your finger.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big brand. Actually recognize a lot of these brands.
As in like big brands, you mean?
Just brands I've seen on Amazon, not big brands, We've contacted some of them actually.
I remember this one we did last week, this tree gator.
Yeah.
For anybody watching, this is the process. It's literally just sifting through, but this is way better than going on Amazon, right? Because if we were to go on Amazon and search, we would have to go into from one category to the next. So we'd actually have to go to the Amazon's catalog, and we'd have to niche down further and further, so we go here, and then we go to another subcategory. And as we're going through these different subcategories, even in a multi subcategory, we're still going to be faced with massive brands. We're going to be faced with Amazon all over the listings. So that's why we use this tool. And as you go through this and get better on it, you can find brands a lot quicker. We're using this tool because we're capping it at a certain monthly revenue. So we're not going to get all those brands that Amazon is on.
Yeah, what's that? Go up a little bit. Or is that like grocery three ladies? What's that brand? Kind of stuck out to me a little bit. Wow, it's a low sell price on that one. It's Amazon. Yeah, Amazon sells direct.
You got a bundle pack here.
Yeah. Which, I mean, again, it's like on a listing like that, reading into the Keepa, determining if, Amazon is competitive on it all the time just because they sell on it. You can make a ton of money on listings that Amazon is not competitive on. And it looks like based on that they're really not. They're actually hardly ever in stock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in terms of this being a brand of interest, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't probably not, I would say, just because the Amazon does sell another one of their products. I mean, maybe you might be interested in something more on a transactional level, but chances are you're not going to convince, exclusivity if they sell to Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, a point that I do want to kind of bring up on that though, and I've talked to a lot of brands. I mean, I'm sure you have too. Is like sometimes brands don't even know that their products are being sold to Amazon because sometimes they're being sold to Amazon through distributors. So for me, I mean, I'm looking at this and I think this is definitely worth a call, worth a shot because like if this was completely saturated with Amazon getting the buy box on this listing as well and on all the listings, then I would say maybe stay away from it. But I don't know. I like this one.
Yeah. So when we're looking at this, just in terms of a product analysis perspective, right? Because the Keepa chart is so critical when we pick up the phone and call the brand, because that's one tool that we're looking at to identify potential problems that the brand has. So it ties very well into product analysis too, because you're sort of killing two birds with one stone. You're taking, you're looking at the Keepa, you're understanding the product analysis of the specific listing, but at the same time, you're also, uh, you know, getting ammunition to potentially, um, you know, provide value to the brand. So in terms of the Keepa chart, there's three main factors we're looking at, right? There's sales volume, which is this green line right here. There's price point, and then we can look at price on multiple levels. And then there's competition. That's not to say there's not other criteria here that we're looking at, but if you could, as somebody who's doing product analysis, if you could master analyzing those three components, you're not just going to be good at making purchase decisions, but you're also going to be really good at pitching brands, because those are, three main ways that you can provide value to brands. Did you want to maybe touch on like how those three ways could actually translate into providing value to, say, a brand?
Yeah, I mean, you want to start with one graph at a time? You want to start with any particular point, or do you want to?
I mean, I would just say, those three main factors, sales volume,
Okay.
price history, and competition. Like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that I always pitch to brands, and when I talk to them, is that one of the things that we want in business, and one of the things that they want as a brand, is consistency. And so we can use the Keepa to determine the consistency of the price. We can use it to determine the consistency of the sellers, and we can, use it to determine the consistency of the sales. And so the closer that we can get that brand to a consistent price point, seller structure, and, incrementally increase or keep a steady, good flow of sales going, the more they're going to be likely to work with us. And so if we can provide them solutions to either decrease the sellers to, have a consistent price. So a lot of people have map violations and things like that. If we can get them to have consistent pricing, I think that that's more of a reason for them to work with you for sure.
mm-hmm.
And that's all determined by Kiva. So like, at the top, we're able to see what that price fluctuation looks like just from looking at that pink line there.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we look at the pink line, we're not seeing crazy erratic pricing over time, but we're not seeing total consistency either. So, you scroll back, you look over the course of a year, and you see that the price is currently at 14.50. A few months ago it was 12.99, and then way back a year ago it was it was like $11. So price is kind of all over the place, but we've seen much more erratic price fluctuations before.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll do when I will send a template or whatever to a brand or a proposal on something like this is I'll take the highest price, I'll take the lowest price, and I'll do a percentage of change over the last, say, 365 days. So in this case, I would take that $11 and then I would take that, whatever it was, 17, and say your product has been volatile, X percentage over the last 365 days or whatever it is. I feel like that's more impactful a lot of times than like 11 versus 17 to a brand.
Yeah. Why is that? Just because of you're giving them that percentage, you would say?
I just think I think the percentage is a little bit more of a slap in the face, because if it's anything over like, 100 or 50 or 60, like that's a lot from a branding perspective. I'm pretty sure I only started doing that because of you, actually. I'm pretty sure you do that, right? You send it in percentages?
Yeah.
Because I was doing it based off of, dollars before. And I just find that I get better response based on a percentage because I think they take it to heart more. It's like removing. If you have an Amazon specific issue, it's like removing it from being an Amazon specific issue and then making it a branding issue. A lot of the times is more impactful to a brand because they care more about their brand than they do about their Amazon sales. And so that's partially what I think it does is it gives it percentage for some reason is just more beneficial.
Yeah. And we were talking about that the other day, which was that, and just pitching brands and providing value, it's like focusing on their, external platforms,
Yeah.
right? Because that's what they really care about. They're very resistant to Amazon. Maybe they don't understand Amazon. So you use Amazon as an educational tool to appeal to the other platforms, because at the end of the day, that's where they see the value in the brick and mortar stores, the distributors, the off Amazon dealers. So if you could say, hey, by cleaning up your Amazon presence, it's actually going to have a positive impact on those off Amazon distributors, you're going to further make progress with the brand. So, I mean, I'm always looking at the relationship here on Keepa between the price and the bottom chart here, because
Right.
generally that relationship is inverse, right? I mean, this isn't an excellent example, but I'm sure we could very easily find one where as sellers goes up, the price goes down. So we see a drop on price as sellers increase, and same goes vice versa. So many times, depending on how severe that is, we will actually send a screenshot of, a very elementary breakdown of Keepa showing here's your number of sellers that have, exponentially increased, and here's where the price has gone. So helping the brand understand that there's no strategic advantage in selling to multiple different resellers, because at the end of the day, it's going to erode the price of their products.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've taken any sort of like basic economics class, that's that supply and demand. Like, as sellers go up, price generally drops because the supply is more. And then it's just the same type of relationship.
How much do you pay attention to this yellow monthly sold here?
I take it as a rough guide. I mean, we're using other softwares that are more accurate than that. And this is also a new feature. Like this has only come out within the last, whatever it is, 6 months, if that. And the thing is, it works based off of hundreds and then thousands once you reach 1,000. So It goes 50, 100, 200, 300, etc. until you get to 1,000. Then it goes from 1,000 to 2,000 to 3,000. So you could be, depending on the price of the product, if you're looking at it from an exclusivity standpoint, I mean, if you're basing it based on what it says there, was that say 1,000 or 400 monthly sold? So you're between 400 and 500. So on a higher ticket item, you want to be as accurate as possible because you're purchasing more. So the only real way that we have found through, unfortunately, a lot of research on our end of accurate sales, there's not been a single program that's 100% accurate. The only accurate way of us knowing what the sales are on a product are having 100% of the buy box for 30 days and seeing those sales numbers. So it's a rough guide. I think it's taken into consideration, but I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't set it in stone by any means.
Yeah.
Because also look at it like it's what is that, July, where it dips from 500 to 400. It's like, look at that fluctuation there. It's like you can't. I mean, in that span of how many days is that? Not even. It's not even a month. It's like 2 weeks. We drop all the way on the left where it's really high. Keep going. Keep going all the way to that. Yep, it's 1,000 a month sold. So projections there versus projections at where we are now is literally half, less than half. So I don't know. That's a great way to forecast.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we got to look at it from a holistic perspective and take, multiple things into account. It's, you know, this, I think you were mentioning a specific scenario we were dealing with last year. It only becomes extremely important when, you have to maybe like make a purchase commitment with a brand,
Yeah.
right? Outside of that, like if you have to put in blanket purchase orders for some type of exclusive with a brand, outside of that, it's a guide that you use to you still place a test order. You always place a test order, no matter what, right? And so when you place those test orders, obviously as you grow, maybe your risk tolerance goes up. You have more capital, so a test order, it's relative to where you're at, but still you want to place somewhat of a test order because that's going to give you that gauge that Brandon talked about, which was actually seeing the orders come through in your orders and understanding, okay, this is really how fast this product moves. And same goes for arbitrage too. It's like you don't buy 1,000 units if it's available. You place a smaller order, maybe buy 10 units, 20 units, and then you go back and you keep buying more as it continues to sell.
I mean, I'll put it this way with the monthly sold line. If that line was straight across and it was fairly consistent between, let's say, 400 and 500 sales, I would take it more accurately than I would with something like this, because this rank is changing. And some products do, whether it's seasonal or whether, there's higher demand for one reason or another.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going, if I read this and if I just based off of, let's say I'm assuming that I'm going to get 20% of the buy box on something like this. Well, if I'm going based off of the monthly solds back in, May, I'm going to be purchasing 200 units for 20% of the buy box, versus if I was doing it based on 400 units, I'm going to be purchasing 20% of 400, and it's totally different numbers in the span of just, a month or two. So it's more important to look at the overall demand and the overall sales, because this on Keepa is changing every time it hits that new benchmark. Keepa is changing. It's not changing by the month. It's not averaging by the monthly sales.
Yeah. And the other thing is in demonstrating relationships here, right? Like when this product wants to sell at $12.99 because it does sell better. Putting this yellow line aside, like we can clearly see that the rank is for the most part in the 4 digits, see the high 4 digits here when it's selling at $12.99, and then right when this price goes up to $14.99, it really starts slowing down in sales.
Right.
So that's something you got to consider in that seasonality. Q4 is coming. What are the prices that it's selling at? I mean, price tends to go out the window in Q4, November, December. But at the same time, understanding the relationship between volume and price is key, because I've seen a lot of new sellers, make an investment in something at a price it used to be, right? Or not accounting for the reduction in demand. Maybe the supply is low. They don't account for the reduction in demand. They buy too many units, and the price, the demand is not there because the price is higher.
Yeah, buying a product because it looks good now is possibly one of the worst things you can do. I think we did that early on, just like a lot of people did, because you get excited and the buy box looks great, but you have to look at the historical, consistent lowest price as a safe bet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how much attention would you say we're paying to this data tab with the buy box statistics here?
Again, it's kind of a reference, right? Like we look at it as something that is the buy box rotating, but on the other hand, it's there's no substitute for getting that product in your inventory, which again goes back to the test orders. So it's like you'd rather make a mistake on an item that you're not going to get the buy box with a small amount of capital, a small amount of units, just to test the rotation of that buy box to see if you're going to get the sales. But I think that at first glance, this looks like it's rotating amongst the sellers at fairly competitive prices. So it's a guide, but it's again, there's no substitute for getting the product in your inventory.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes because we've been down the whole road of physically monitoring the buy box and like watching stock of who's going in, who's going out of the buy box. Sometimes you're just better off just placing a small test order
Yeah.
and getting a gauge on it.
I don't love this listing on the basis of there's 16 sellers. I don't know how many of those are prime eligible or competitive, but
yeah, I mean, a decent amount.
Yeah. Yeah, on products, I mean, it doesn't look like this is one of them, but I did see a couple that have like a couple of units in stock, 5, 6 units in stock. Sometimes those are arbitrage people that are finding these products on the store shelf and then sending them into Amazon. So if you see a ton of sellers with a couple units in stock each on something, it could be arbitrage.
We also got a question here from John asking, if supplier provides free shipping, how can we use their shipping to ship directly to Amazon?
You just, if they're prepping product for you, you have to instruct them on how to appropriately prep the product and then create the shipment for them in whatever shipment creation software you use, and just send them the labels and have them apply them to the boxes just like you would, and they'll send direct to Amazon for you.
Yeah. And if they're giving you free shipping, depending on the conversation you had with them, I mean, sometimes suppliers are apprehensive about like shipping to Amazon just because it's another step that they have to worry about. It's another, burden on them. So like if they're going to provide free shipping to you right off the bat, I would probably say at least, for the first order, unless they're totally accustomed to shipping to Amazon, you might want to just have those products shipped to you, especially because there's no additional cost. That way you can ensure QC, get everything prepped the way Amazon wants. You can get your hands on the product and see it. And, maybe have them send a shipment in later on after you're already working with them.
Right. I mean, if they're sending it in to, if they're doing free shipping to you, then you're really at that point, the only difference that you're paying is the cost of you or your employee to prep that product, or your prep center or whatever it is, versus them doing it, paying their employee, and then not charging you for it. And the trade-off is, again, the quality control, like Brad was saying. So if it's a new supplier, I would ship to you first, like you said. But as far as creating that shipment and having them ship direct, as long as they're prepping the products correctly, send them the labels, and then that's it.
Yeah.
In which case, like using a manufacturer barcode, it might be helpful,
Yeah. Following up on that question, does more sellers being on the listing cause more problems from your experience with your non-exclusive brands? Does seller count generally increase or stay the same over time?
It just really depends on how willing the brand is to give out wholesale accounts. One thing that I will say is that it's kind of a loosely related, but the more you are in stock and you maintain an in stock rate, the more you're going to get the buy box. So if you are consistently in stock on the product and you've been selling it for a while, there is a higher chance, as long as everyone is playing nice, for lack of a better term, being competitive with each other, at the same price or roughly the same price, you'll probably get the buy box more than other people if you've been stocking that product for a long time. So it's kind of loosely related, but it really all depends on the account. And then at that point, if it starts to become unprofitable and it's either pitch them or lose the product out of your inventory, it might be worth a pitch at that point if it becomes real bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and also educating the brand on why it's not good to sell to a lot of sellers. We have an account that a couple of years ago, we were one of maybe 5 sellers, and the brand at that time, they kind of sold to anyone, right? They just didn't understand, that people want to buy, they're going to sell to them. So we helped them understand why you don't want to do that, why that can do serious damage to your brand on Amazon. And so they capped it at 5, right? And so now we get actually almost 100% of the buy box because, like Brandon talked about, that in stock rate. But if we didn't have that conversation with the brand and just educate them, who knows how many sellers we would be competing with now.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is a big part of it, just in general, because a lot of these brands are not educated on Amazon, and that's kind of where your expertise and skill level comes into play.
Yeah. The reason why I'm like Xing that out is just because I really didn't see any volume on that listing.
Also be hazmat too. You don't know.
Yeah. What do you think about this?
The old yerba mate that we love so much.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't tried yerba mate, it's very good. It's like a tea, sort of. Well, it is a tea, right?
Yeah, it's like an Argentinian tea.
Yeah.
So, the first thing we notice here is just the obvious things. One image, no brand store, very, very little information in this listing. I mean, a couple of bullet points. There's no, nutrition facts or anything listed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a mover. It's not like insane, but it's definitely a mover. I mean, you got a 4-digit rank here pretty consistently.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I don't like about this is the price point versus the weight.
Yeah.
And so again, like that buy box is a merchant fulfilled offer. And I don't know if there's FBA offers on this. And we've also got two of the same variation as different variations.
Yeah.
So this is actually a good point that I kind of want to highlight here. If you scroll up and look at that FBA offer, actually you're good where you are. Just that lowest FBA offer, right? So we see that buy box right now is at $13.99 for the FBM offer, but we've also got Prime offers that are here, or Amazon FBA offers at $17.45. So a lot of the times, we're looking at a higher FBA price than a merchant fulfilled price will still get the buy box. But on a listing like this, you can safely assume, hey, if I'm selling this I'm FBAing this. If I try and sell it at 17.40 or whatever it is, I'm probably not going to get the buy box from this merchant fulfilled offer. So like taking that stuff into account and what that magical number is, I don't know. It just depends on what Amazon will give you the buy box at. It could be 16, it could be 15, it could not be till 14.50. So it really depends on what Amazon will give you the buy box at, and you have to kind of make that determination based on once you send the product in. So
Right. Yeah, and the whole price to weight thing is big. I don't think, if sellers are looking at this, maybe newer sellers, like that's probably not something they're looking at all the time. Like from a transactional standpoint, I find it hard to believe that that you'd be able to make money on this product.
yeah, I
Uh,
agree.
so, I mean, maybe we would reach out to the brand from the perspective of, you know, education and providing value and potentially convincing into an exclusive.
Mhm.
So it all kind of, these are all various factors that we're considering. And it's happening relatively quickly as we look at the listing, we gather the information, and then we make the call to the brand as we have the listing up and, start having a conversation with the brand.
Because you got to figure too, like the idea of making money on a transactional level kind of just goes out the window. So then once that's the case, then you move to the next stage to say, all right, well, this is a good listing. It's moving. It's got volume. But the only way that we're going to make any money on it at all is if we swing for the fences and try to pitch them.
Yeah. Most of our exclusives have come from relationships that we already work with the brand, right? And maybe we go into the relationship with the intention of exclusivity down the line, but we just started by working, a transactional level.
Yeah.
But it depends. There's brands that we've closed like almost right off the bat. So it's a mixed bag. So, I mean, as we're coming up on like 45 minutes here, so in terms of when somebody goes and first thing you're going to do is let's say you've identified a product that's of interest, right? To potentially reach out to the brand. The first thing you're going to do is go to Google, type in the name of the brand's website. You're going to go to the brand's website. You're going to find the contact phone number and you're going to call them. If there's no phone number available, you're going to send them an email or send a contact inquiry on the website explaining, what your name of your company, where you're located, and that you want to open a wholesale. You're interested in opening a wholesale account. And if you're met with resistance or you don't get a reply or you're met with resistance on the phone, don't be afraid to ask for distributors too. If this is not an account that you are able that you believe you can close directly with the brand, um, you can potentially ask them for a list of authorized distributors to get an account with them. And a lot of times when you get an account with a distributor, you start working up some volume with them. You prove to the brand, hey, we can do this kind of volume. It might make sense later on to actually work directly with the brand. But at the same time, we're looking 95% of the brands that we reach out to. If we're met with resistance, we're looking to push and keep pushing.
Yep, exactly. We've been finding some solid, like if someone's watching this, I mean, you can literally call these brands and use these exact sort of methods and different things that we're talking about to talk to them, because a lot of these brands that we've been finding have been, I would contact them.
Yeah, exactly. We were saying that. It's like, you know, these are actual brands that you can contact.
Right.
So anybody watching this, like, call them up, like, see what happens. Use some of the things we're telling you. It's don't be afraid to actually reach out to these physical brands. The exercise of this lesson is not to just give you brands. I mean, if we get brands from it, great, but it's more to conceptualize things and get an understanding of how to reach out to these brands, how to find the brands, and how to grow your business.
Teach a man to fish, right? That's what they say.
Yep. Yes, sir. So if you guys have any last minute questions, drop them out here in the chat. If not, we read all the comments on YouTube. Drop it on YouTube. Like the video on YouTube, really helps out the videos and the algorithm. If you guys aren't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, notification bell. We're dropping videos every week on YouTube. We're all over Instagram, Twitter, so follow us on those channels.
And if anyone wants to, I thought of it when I said the teach a man to fish thing. There's a shirt that I want. Have I ever showed it to you? It says like it's supposed to have that saying on it, but it's like totally botched. And I just looked it up, and it says, instead of teach a man to fish or whatever, it says buy a man, eat fish, heat a, teach fish man to a lifetime. And then there's just a picture of a salmon. So I would love to be surprised at AMZ United or another networking event with that shirt. If anyone wants to get me that.
Yeah. And if you guys are going to be at AMZ United, give us a shout. We'll be
That was
there.
my segue into
So
AMZ
all right.
United.
Yeah. All right. Well, anybody's watching, thanks for watching. We're live every Wednesday, and reach out to us if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you next time.